Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where every coin tells a story, and sometimes that story is worth millions. Today, we're diving into a tale unlike any other, one that combines history, mystery, and an unimaginable fortune. We're talking about a quarter. Yes, a simple 25-cent coin, the 2006 South Dakota 1889 quarter dollar, which defied all odds and ended up being valued at a staggering $189 million. But this isn't just about a coin, it's about where it came from, what it meant, the journey it took, and how a forgotten relic of modern minting became one of the most astonishing finds in U.S. numismatic history. Our story begins far from the polished glass cases of museums or the quiet corners of coin collector expos. It starts in a dusty old barn on the outskirts of Mitchell, South Dakota. The barn belonged to a reclusive man named Frank Ellison. Frank had been a postal worker for nearly 4 decades before retiring to a simple life of tending to his garden, maintaining his property, and occasionally venturing into town for a slice of cherry pie and a hot coffee. To the locals, Frank was quiet, maybe even a little odd, but kind-hearted and humble. No one suspected he harbored a treasure. Frank had been an avid coin collector in his youth, a hobby he shared with his father. But as time went on and life became busier, the coins found their way into boxes, the boxes into crates, and eventually everything was packed away into the loft of his barn. There it stayed for nearly 40 years, untouched, undisturbed, gathering dust and whispers of time. Then, in the early summer of 2022, Frank passed away peacefully in his sleep. With no immediate family, his estate fell into the hands of a distant niece, Marlene, who lived in Oregon. She flew to South Dakota with little knowledge of her uncle and even less expectation of anything of value. Her plan was simple: clean out the property, sell the land, and return to her life out west. It was during this cleaning process, sifting through decades of stacked newspapers, old farm tools, and forgotten keepsakes, that Marlene stumbled upon the crates. There were 10 in total, each marked with dates and labeled meticulously by hand. Inside were thousands of coins, pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, and more. Some were still in mint rolls, others in plastic holders, and many more loose and clinking together in the bottom of coffee tins. Marlene knew nothing about coins. But she had a feeling that someone out there might be interested in this strange inheritance. She contacted a local antique dealer, who in turn referred her to a coin expert named Harold Jensen. Harold had been in the coin business for over 30 years, and he had seen a lot. But when he opened those crates and began sorting through the contents, he knew this wasn't your average collection. What caught his eye almost immediately was a quarter that looked like it had no business being there. It was a 2006 South Dakota quarter, part of the 50 State Quarters series released by the U.S. Mint between 1999 and 2008. At first glance, there didn't seem to be anything unusual about it. It featured the customary images: Mount Rushmore, a pheasant in flight, and the outline of the state. But then Harold noticed the date. Below the design was the year 1889, bold, clear, and undeniably out of place. That was strange. The South Dakota quarter was released in 2006, commemorating its statehood in 1889. But no state quarter had ever been minted with the year 1889 featured as the primary date on the reverse or obverse. Intrigued, Harold brought out his loupe and examined the quarter more closely. The craftsmanship was unlike anything he'd seen. There were subtle differences in the engraving, minute details in the pheasant's feathers, the facial features on Mount Rushmore, even the shape of the letters. This wasn't a mint error. This was something entirely different. Harold sent the coin to the Numismatic Guarantee Company for authentication. What came back shocked everyone. The coin was not just authentic, it was unique. According to the NGC, the quarter was a one-of-one prototype, produced as an internal test by the U.S. Mint in 2005, ahead of the 2006 release. What made it extraordinary was that it had never been meant for circulation. Even more perplexing was the date 1889 stamped on it, a nod to South Dakota statehood, yes, but in a placement and style that suggested something more symbolic than commemorative. The theories began to swirl. Some believed it had been part of a secret mint project. Others thought it might have been a personal creation by a mint engraver, slipped out quietly and never reported. But the most compelling theory came from a former mint employee, who came forward anonymously to say that the coin was part of an abandoned concept. In early 2005, there had been an idea to produce a limited series of state quarters with actual dual dates, marking both the year of statehood and the year of release, in a highly artistic style that mimicked 19th century coins. It was eventually scrapped due to concerns about public confusion and cost. But not before a handful of prototypes were allegedly made. Only one was ever recovered, Frank Ellison's quarter. The numismatic world exploded. News outlets picked up the story. Coin collectors, historians, and investors all clamored for a look at the legendary piece. Auction houses began whispering of seven-figure values, then eight. In the summer of 2023, after months of preparation and legal verifications, the coin went to auction. The bidding started at a cool $5 million. Within minutes, it had crossed $20 million. By the end of the night, it had been sold to a private collector from Switzerland for a record-breaking $189 million, making it the most valuable modern coin ever sold. The sale sent ripples through the world of rare coins. How could a 2006 quarter, a coin many people had in their pocket change, command such a price? The answer, of course, lay in its absolute uniqueness, its mysterious origin, its impeccable preservation, and the captivating story that came with it. But more than that, it reminded collectors and casual observers alike that value is not always about age or metal content. Sometimes, it's about rarity, history, and the powerful combination of myth and reality. As for Marlene, the proceeds from the sale changed her life. She donated a portion to local charities in South Dakota, set up a scholarship in Frank's name, and used the rest to travel the world, a dream she'd long put off. And wherever she went, she told the story of her quiet uncle, the coin he never mentioned, and the incredible fortune he left behind. But the story doesn't end there. After the sale, several other collectors began scouring their own collections for anything resembling Frank's quarter. Online forums lit up with debates and blurry images of questionable coins. The U.S. Mint issued a statement confirming the legitimacy of the piece and acknowledged the internal prototype project, though they denied that more than one had ever left the premises. Still, rumors persist to this day. Some say Frank had more than one unique coin in those crates. Others claim that the prototype wasn't a prototype at all, but part of a secret commemorative series intended for VIPs, only to be halted and covered up before distribution. And then there are those who believe that the coin wasn't just valuable because of its design or rarity, but because it was tied to a deeper mystery involving lost designs, hidden engravings, and a coded message that only certain collectors have begun to decipher. One thing is certain: the 2006 South Dakota 1889 quarter dollar is now more than just a coin. It's a legend. It's a reminder that history is not just something we study in books, it's something we carry in our pockets, something that can resurface when we least expect it and rewrite everything we thought we knew about value, legacy, and luck. So the next time you reach for a quarter to feed a parking meter or buy a soda, take a closer look. You never know what story might be staring back at you from the ridged edge of silver. The world of coins is vast, mysterious, and sometimes, just sometimes, worth $189 million. And with that, we close the book on another incredible journey into the world of rare and valuable coins. If you enjoyed this story, stick around, because there are more treasures waiting to be uncovered, and more secrets buried in the coins we thought we knew. Next, every coin has a hidden story, and sometimes a simple quarter can be worth a fortune beyond imagination. Today, we dive deep into a tale wrapped in history, mystery, and the untouched beauty of the American Midwest. It's about a coin that nobody saw coming, a 2017 Ozark Riverways quarter dollar that turned out to be worth $127 million. Not just for its rarity, not just for an error, but for a complex chain of events that began over a century ago and ended with a discovery that shocked the numismatic world. Get ready for a story unlike any other, a journey through time, deception, rediscovery, and ultimately, fortune. In the spring of 2018, just a year after the U.S. Mint released the America the Beautiful quarter featuring the Ozark National Scenic Riverways in Missouri, a coin collector by the name of Doyle Mercer sat in a modest one-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Doyle wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, and he certainly wasn't the kind of collector who frequented high-end auctions. His collection was scattered across shoeboxes, coffee tins, and plastic sleeves, most of which had been picked out of pocket change or flea market bins. But Doyle had one thing most others didn't: an unshakable intuition. Doyle believed that sometimes the most valuable coins weren't the oldest or the most perfectly struck, but the ones that had a story. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he was always looking. That's how he came across what would later be known as the most expensive Ozark Riverways quarter in history. He found it in the most unlikely of places, a gas station parking lot. It was early evening. Doyle had just purchased a hot dog and a soda, and as he walked back to his truck, something on the ground caught his eye. It wasn't shiny or remarkable at first glance, just a quarter resting against the edge of a painted parking space. But there was something odd about it. The texture looked strange, almost like brushed steel, and the edge appeared thicker than usual. Most people would have walked right by it, but Doyle picked it up, turned it over, and squinted at the fine details. The reverse of the coin showed Alley Mill, the iconic red structure nestled along the Jack's Fork River, just like it was supposed to. But something was off. The perspective seemed skewed, like the mill was set at a different angle. The trees behind it were fuller, more detailed. The clouds were sharper, like an artist had added strokes no one else had ever seen. But the most shocking feature was a single, barely visible detail etched into the shaded area behind the mill. Hidden in the image's background was a tiny, almost imperceptible engraving of a riverboat. No other Ozark Riverways quarter had that. Doyle knew immediately he had something unique, but he didn't know just how unique. He brought it to a local coin shop, but the owner shrugged it off. "Could be a die variety," he said. "Or someone's idea of a joke." But Doyle didn't give up. He mailed high-resolution photos to numismatics forums, contacted specialists, and finally, after weeks of searching, got a response from an obscure coin historian named Reginald Fry who had spent the last 2 decades researching rare quarter anomalies. Reginald took one look at the coin and asked Doyle to fly to Pennsylvania immediately. Doyle, hesitant but curious, agreed. What Reginald revealed would change both of their lives forever. According to Reginald's research, the U.S. Mint had originally planned a series of artistic alternates for each quarter in the America the Beautiful series. These designs were produced secretly, never made public, and were stored in a private digital archive in Denver. Each alternate design was said to have a unique historical nod, and in the case of the Ozark Riverways quarter, it was a reference to the era of riverboat travel that predated the mill's construction. In 2016, one of those alternate designs was accidentally used during a test run on a newly installed press in the Denver Mint. According to an internal memo Reginald had obtained through a retired Mint employee, only 5 such test coins were ever produced before the mistake was noticed and the dies destroyed. All 5 coins were meant to be melted down. Somehow, one escaped, and it had landed in a gas station parking lot in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What followed was a media circus. Once the coin was authenticated, through metallurgical analysis, design comparison, and historical record, it was deemed a one-of-one artifact, the only surviving example of the lost alternate design series. The numismatic community erupted. This wasn't just a mint error or a rare variety. This was a glimpse into an alternate reality of American coinage, a design that was supposed to remain unseen forever. Doyle's coin became known as the Phantom Quarter. Collectors from around the world offered to buy it, with initial bids reaching into the tens of millions. But Doyle didn't sell, not right away. He wanted to understand why this coin existed, what it meant, and whether there were others. He partnered with Reginald, and together they embarked on a journey across the Midwest to uncover more. Their search led them to the Ozark National Scenic Riverways itself, where they met park rangers, local historians, and old-timers who remembered stories from the region's past. That's when they learned about a man named Harrison Bell, an engraver who worked for the Mint in the 1980s and had retired to a cabin not far from the park. Bell had reportedly continued engraving well into his retirement, creating fantasy pieces and prototypes that were never intended for circulation. Some believed he was consulted for the America the Beautiful designs. Others thought he worked independently, his pieces somehow smuggled into circulation through friends still working at the Mint. Whether by coincidence or intention, Bell had passed away in 2017, the same year the Ozark Quarter was released. When Doyle and Reginald visited his cabin, they found it abandoned, but still filled with tools, sketches, and a filing cabinet stuffed with coin molds, most of them unfinished. Hidden in a false bottom drawer, they found a design for the very riverboat image etched into Doyle's quarter, dated 2014, labeled ATB/Altar/Ozark R. The discovery confirmed it. The quarter Doyle had found was not only a mistake, it was a piece of American numismatic folklore, a bridge between officially sanctioned coinage and the hidden artistry that almost was. It was also, it turned out, priceless. In late 2020, after much debate and several offers from museums and private collectors, Doyle finally agreed to auction the coin. It was sold to a tech billionaire with a passion for hidden American history for an astonishing $127 million, making it the fourth most expensive coin ever sold, and the highest value for any coin minted after the year 2000. Doyle used part of the money to start a numismatic education foundation, named after Reginald Fry, who sadly passed away before the auction. He also built a coin museum in Springfield, Missouri, dedicated to lesser-known stories of American coinage. But perhaps his greatest act was using his platform to inspire a new generation of collectors to look at every coin not just as currency, but as a capsule of history, mystery, and sometimes, miracle. Even today, people still wonder whether more of those test coins made it out. Rumors persist of a second phantom quarter turning up in a coin roll in Texas, but nothing has been authenticated. The mint remains tight-lipped, refusing to confirm or deny any knowledge beyond what's publicly known. But one thing remains certain: the story of the 2017 Ozark Riverways $quarter is no longer about just a coin. It's about the hidden layers of American artistry, the curious minds who refuse to stop asking questions, and the astonishing truths waiting to be found in the smallest places. So next time you get a quarter in your change, take a good look. Tilt it in the light. Trace the edges. Examine the background. Because somewhere, just maybe, history is waiting for you to pick it up off the pavement. Last, today's story is going to take you deep into one of the most unexpected corners of American history and numismatics, a story not just about coins, but about mystery, nature, national pride, and a chance encounter that unraveled a hidden fortune no one ever expected. The 2020 Tallgrass Prairie $quarter is not just a coin. It's a symbol of rarity, of untold stories buried beneath ordinary objects, and perhaps even a secret bigger than money itself. Sit tight, because this isn't just a story of how a simple quarter reached a value of $132 million. This is a journey you'll remember. It all started not with a collector or a coin dealer, but with a botanist. Dr. Hannah Marlowe was her name, a quiet but passionate researcher who had devoted her life to studying native prairie grasses in the Midwest. She worked for a small ecological research center located near Emporia, Kansas. She wasn't wealthy. She didn't care about material things. Her world revolved around plants, ecology, and documenting the vanishing tallgrass ecosystems that once covered vast areas of North America. But on one early spring morning in 2022, her life and a piece of American history would change forever. That day, Dr. Marlowe was prepping for a field excursion into the Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve, a location she'd walked hundreds of times before. Her grant funding had just been renewed, and she was eager to examine how the region's flora was recovering after a controlled burn. She stopped by a small gas station on the edge of town to grab a bottle of water and a sandwich for lunch. At the counter, she handed over a $5 bill, received her change, and walked out. Simple, routine. But later, while resting under the open sky beside a cluster of big bluestem and Indian grass, she took out her change to put it in her wallet and noticed something curious. It was a quarter, but not just any quarter. The reverse side caught her attention first. She knew about the America the Beautiful Quarters series. She had seen the coin before, the intricate image of a regal fritillary butterfly resting on swaying prairie grasses. But this one, something about it felt off. The metal had a different sheen. The design was slightly misaligned, yet almost flawlessly so, as if it had been minted intentionally different. And strangest of all was the edge. It wasn't reeded like most quarters. It was smooth, as if someone had polished it down, but it looked untouched. At first, she dismissed it as a minting error, interesting perhaps, but not worth much. Still, something compelled her to hold on to it. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was fate. She slid it into a tiny zip pouch in her backpack and didn't think about it again for days. Meanwhile, halfway across the country, in New York City, a private auction was being quietly organized by an elite group of numismatists. Rumors had begun to circulate of a lost coin from the 2020 minting series, an ultra-rare piece that was never meant to be circulated, known only by its codename, Project Zephyr. According to whispers within elite coin circles, the U.S. Mint had secretly created a set of prototype coins embedded with a unique, microscopic encryption, a kind of metallic DNA signature. Only 5 such coins were believed to exist, produced not for circulation but for testing new security technology and design methods. They were supposedly destroyed. Officially, they never existed, but someone at that secretive New York auction claimed to have traced one of these coins to the Midwest. Dr. Marlowe, oblivious to this unfolding drama, continued her fieldwork. She decided, on a whim one evening, to post a photo of the strange coin on her private blog, which normally attracted only fellow botanists and nature lovers. She wrote about how the coin design beautifully honored the tallgrass prairie ecosystem, and asked if anyone knew more about minting anomalies. She thought it was just a curiosity, but within 24 hours, she received 3 messages from strangers offering to buy the coin for thousands of dollars. One offered $10,000 immediately. She thought it was a joke. Then came a call to her research center. A man introduced himself as working with a private historical society and asked to meet her in person to examine the coin. Alarm bells rang. She turned him down and did what any scientist would do. She began researching. She learned about Project Zephyr. She discovered obscure threads in collector forums where people debated the coin's existence. She found an old FOIA document request online that hinted at an internal mint investigation launched in 2020 about untracked prototypes. Her curiosity turned to unease. What had she found? With the help of a friend who taught metallurgy at a nearby university, she ran a non-destructive X-ray analysis on the coin. What they found shocked them. The coin had an abnormal metal composition, not the standard cupronickel, but a strange alloy containing trace amounts of iridium and osmium. Those are rare and highly valuable elements. But more than that, embedded in the coin's center was a microscopic filament that appeared to respond to magnetic fields in complex patterns. It was as if the coin had circuitry. That was no ordinary quarter. She contacted the U.S. Mint through official channels, hoping to quietly return the item if it was indeed government property. But the response she got was evasive. They acknowledged her message, then went silent. A week later, 2 men claiming to be federal agents showed up at her lab. They asked for the coin. She asked for a warrant. They left empty-handed. That night, her research center was broken into. Nothing was taken except her backpack. Fortunately, she had already removed the coin and hidden it. At this point, she realized this wasn't just about numismatics. There was a secret embedded in that piece of metal, and powerful people were trying to bury it. She went public not through news media, but through an encrypted upload to several numismatic historians and investigative journalists who had covered financial and governmental cover-ups before. One of them, a reclusive former Mint employee known by the pseudonym Quintus, confirmed what she feared. She had one of the 5 original Zephyr coins, the only known specimen believed to still exist. Why was it worth so much? Beyond the material composition and prototype design, the coin reportedly contained a nanotechnology testbed for future currency, possibly even blockchain-compatible tracking that could eliminate counterfeiting forever. It represented a financial leap decades ahead of its time. But there was more. Embedded within the coin was a tiny storage unit. And within that unit was encrypted data. Quintus revealed that the Zephyr project was shut down not because of failure, but because it worked too well. The coin's traceability posed a threat to anonymous wealth and powerful institutions. Someone buried it. And now, the resurfacing of a single coin put everything at risk. But it also made it the most valuable quarter in human history. Bidding, in underground markets, had reached $132 million. Dr. Marlowe didn't sell the coin. She did something far more radical. With Quintus's help and digital allies around the globe, she decrypted the data in the coin. It wasn't financial records or tracking code. It was a message. A message from a whistleblower inside the Mint, left in 2020, warning of a massive global financial manipulation scheme involving rare metals, offshore coin hoards, and artificial scarcity used to control markets. The message was explosive. The story reached a major publication after months of vetting, and heads rolled. High-ranking officials resigned. Investigations were launched. But still, the coin remained in Dr. Marlowe's possession. Then came the final twist. A global museum of currency, backed by international institutions, offered not to buy the coin, but to house it indefinitely as a monument to transparency, innovation, and history. She agreed on one condition: the exhibit would include the full story. Every lie, every cover-up, and every detail of how a single quarter exposed a silent war between control and freedom. Today, the 2020 Tallgrass Prairie quarter dollar sits behind bulletproof glass, housed in a climate-controlled room, under constant observation. It is insured at $132 million, but its true value is beyond measure. It represents the convergence of art, science, secrecy, and courage. And it came from the pocket of a botanist who simply loved the prairie. So the next time you find a quarter in your change, take a closer look. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary truths are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice. Stay curious, and keep looking. You never know what story might be waiting in your hand. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.